Okay, welcome everyone to this afternoon's edition of Inside the Outhouse. This week we're looking at sleeping systems, how they work, who needs to use them, which is probably all of us in the outdoors, and getting heaps of that really interesting information from our friends at SeatoSummit. Before we start, I'd like to just acknowledge the work of the Outhouse team. Pete Smith, who can't be with us this week, he's out on program with a bunch of USC students, and he is quite disappointed he can't be here because he needs some work on his sleep system. So he's looking forward to watching afterwards and hopefully getting some good tips and advice. Sheree Mullen, myself, Ellen Barker and Dave Maskell. And before we start the session, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all country in Australia, their elders past and present, and recognise that they continue to hold very important links to country, and that as outdoor educators we need to ensure that our facilitation recognises their very important links to country. So I might throw over to Sheree, who will introduce our guests from SeatoSummit, and we can begin from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. Here today with us from SeatoSummit, we have Ross Smith, who will be speaking to us. He's the brand manager for SeatoSummit, and he'll be looking after sleeping mats and sleeping bags, among many other things. We also are lucky enough to have Rob McSporran with us, who is the national sales manager, and he's been working with SeatoSummit for, I think, about 12 years, he said. So I will now pass over to Ross, who can take it away for us.
Guys, thanks for having me, first of all. Secondly, just say that I had a small thing pop up that says my internet connection is unstable. Now, hopefully that doesn't cause us any issues. I'm in one of our nice meeting rooms, and usually it is absolutely fine. So please just wave or jump up and down if you can't hear me and I need to go back a step or two. So yeah, no, it's really exciting to be able to present to you guys, I think, and hopefully, people that will be able to view the recording after it's done. I'm going to jump a bit in and out of a presentation, and then where I am now with some of the props that I have. So I'll be sharing a screen and then going back to the camera. So hopefully you can follow that quite well. Stand by and I'll just share this now. Hopefully everybody can see a nice jagged peak with the sleep systems text underneath it. I can still see all of you guys on the side, which is fantastic. So just very quickly, a bit about me, my passions as well. So I grew up in the UK. If I have to jump to the next slide on here. When I was a kid, I was lucky enough to be part of a lot of outdoor education, different in the UK. The left-hand picture there of the fog is a national park called Dartmoor, which if anyone's been to the UK may be familiar with. That's where, as a teenager, I learned to do a lot of navigation. That is the weather that you have all the time there, actually all the time. So from an outdoor education instructor's point of view, it must have been a nightmare for them trying to keep tabs of a dozen 13-year-olds as we were walking around in the fog. Following then, though, I did a degree in outdoor studies, actually, in the Lake District, the north of the UK, which is on the right-hand side. Again, the weather's never usually like that. That's a nice photo. So my passion from the outdoor really stemmed from my own education, and that came into tertiary education, and then stemmed to SeatoSummit when I moved out here. So a little bit different in Perth. There's not quite as many mountains on the doorstep. We've got a long coastline with beautiful beaches, but when you get the opportunity to go exploring, there's some incredible parts of this country. I've been in Australia now for 10 years, and I've been at SeatoSummit for 7, which is pretty cool. And just earlier this year, that was an opportunity to quickly jump up Frenchman's Gap in Tasmania. What a beautiful part of the world that is. So not quite as many adventures as I've previously been on, but it's been really nice to take some of that knowledge into retail stores, and now to where I am here. So actually, I'll just quickly jump back one. So my role at SeatoSummit is a brand manager. We have 27 brands that we distribute here in Australia. Of course, SeatoSummit is the name on the building, and that's what we do globally, not just within Australia. As a brand manager, I'm working with retail stores in their buying decisions, ranging decisions for the country. So I decide what mats and bags we bring in. A lot of training too, and a lot of education. I think it's really important. Really important that we empower retail stores to be able to educate and correctly advise customers what they should be purchasing. I'll also work on marketing and also then with the design team. So, you know, they're just downstairs at the moment. We've got a great direct connection with them, and feedback that we get really dictates where the brand moves and what sort of direction particular categories might go. So I said at the start, I've got my notepad here ready to go. If we come up with any great design ideas today, if they're good enough, me and Rob will kind of claim them for our own, and we'll take them downstairs to the design team. Just throughout this session, guys, if you've got any burning questions or anything that's relevant at the time, please don't hesitate to jump in. I'm used to presenting in front of a crowd of very keen and eager staff members of a retail store, and then never short of a curly question or two. Equally, we'll have a nice Q&A at the end as well. So yeah, please jump in as and when it feels right. Yeah, I don't mind being heckled if there's anything that you think I've said wrong, or I'm sure there'll be some good questions. So who is SeatoSummit? Quick slide here, and then I'm going to come back into the room. Hopefully many of you are familiar with our brand. You know, we're celebrating 30 years of innovation this year. This is a few very old school slides here. Roland, who's in the image there on the bottom right, is the head of our company. He's a head designer, and that's where the brand's been driven from, and continues to be a design-driven brand. The name stems from him working with his friend Tim for his expedition from sea to the summit of Mount Everest. And yeah, 30 years later, it's a whole different beast. During my 7 years here, I've seen products and technologies change massively. That's on top of, you know, 10 years or so before that, enjoying outdoor gear. I had a Van Gogh Force 10 tent, which is a canvas number, which is horrible. And I think we all probably used to sleep, or still maybe sleep, on a sort of 5 mil thick closed cell foam mat. So a lot has changed since then, and continues to do so. Pleasingly, with SeatoSummit as well, I see us actually, you know, quite proudly leading the way, not just within Australia, but globally, with some of the designs that have come from the guys downstairs. I'd love to take credit for them, but that's not the case. And you're seeing other brands copy you, and whenever that happens, that's because you're doing something right, but it also means you need to continue to innovate. So I'll show you guys today some of the latest stuff, some of the things that are coming up, and also, you know, the reasons why we've developed a lot of them too. There's a nice little snapshot of where the brands come from and to. Pretty old school logos there, most of which I remember, not all though. So sleeping mats. We talk about a sleep system, which is what you've got on the side there, where we talk about building your sleep system. Just out of interest, did anybody have a little go with a sleep system finder that we've got online, or has anybody used that before? Cherie has. I need to show my grid a bit better. There we go. Oh, Mark's there too. I'd strongly suggest you guys have a little look. It's a fascinating tool. It really sort of paints a picture of what a complete sleep system is. And when we talk about that, we want to bring the comfort that you have from home into the outdoors with you. So we have 4 components to a sleep system. The mattress, similar to your mattress at home. A pillow, which goes with your mattress. That's pretty self-explanatory too. We have a sleeping bag, mimicking your doona at home. And then we also have a liner, which works in the same way that your sheets do at home. A lot of hygiene, a little bit of extra comfort. So those 4 components, those 4 categories are what we call our sleep system. And that's what we sort of are seeing some huge sort of popularity in. And also people can tailor it to their individual needs. So it's not necessarily, oh, if you buy this mat, you should buy this bag and this pillow. But it's actually a case of, hey, what do you prefer? What works well for you? And where are you going to be able to tailor something to your individual needs? I like talking about sleeping mats first because it's sort of the foundation of your sleep, and therefore it's quite a nice place for us to start. I find it quite logical. We have two types of sleeping mats. So there's self-inflating mats and there's air mats. I've called them air sprung cells on this document here. As a design-driven brand, we will forever challenge limitations of products. It could be an inherent challenge, such as a bunch of foam being a bit bulkier than air, or it could be a challenge that needs overcoming, such as how to manufacture something. You might have the idea, but nobody's manufactured it before. In the instance of these two types of mats, what we want to do is challenge the limitations in the products that we develop. So just quickly, self-inflating mats, hopefully you're fairly familiar with this concept, which is foam, which is then wrapped in an airtight layer with a valve. Foam has memory. You open the valve and it will essentially suck air in, self-inflating. They typically need 1 or 2 breaths at the end just to top them up. Self-inflating mats are great. They're easy to use because they inflate so quickly, and they're typically warmer because they've got foam throughout them. The limitations of a self-inflating mat are that they're slightly bulkier than air. Hopefully should be quite straightforward to understand. And also that they can be harder to deflate because you've got to squeeze and compress the foam to get all of the air out of it. And then when you come to air mats are they're definitely slightly newer to the outdoor industry. Ultimately, an air mat can always be punctured and that remains a challenge. But the development, I would like to say, of SeatoSummit in this space has really instilled a lot of other brands to consider how air mats work in backpacking market. And of course, they are lightweight and small because you've got nothing inside them, and they're easy to deflate and pack away. Those are the benefits. The limitations typically of an air mat are that they're colder because it's just air within, and they're harder to inflate. There's no foam within an air mat that's sucking in the air. So when we looked at sleeping mats in general, we wanted to identify the limitations, challenge those, and actually improve them. But we also took a huge step backwards when we developed mats 8 years ago and said, why do you use a mat? And that for us was the most important question. Why do you take a mat outside? The total goal, or the primary goal, was to make a mat that was comfortable. It is the reason that you use a mat, right? To have a comfortable night's sleep. We understand the benefits of that the following day as well. If you don't have a great sleep, depending on where you are, it can actually have quite dire consequences. If you had, a peak to try and climb the next morning and you didn't have any sleep, your energy levels are shot. You're not thinking right. You find yourself, going off the wrong edge. You looked at your compass wrong or something like that. A comfortable and a good night's sleep is very, very important. And that was the primary goal. We also wanted to make sure that the mats were durable. They've got to last. I'm sure Ben probably touched on this point in talking about One Planet, that, product that lasts is really important. And that's one of the first things you can do in actually a sustainable way, is making sure that your product is going to go the distance, not something that's, used for a season and then thrown away. So we wanted to make sure that something was durable. And then the final point was also, let's make it easy to use, right? There's no point in having this fancy, comfortable mat that's going to last forever if it's not actually user-friendly. So these 3 points have always been the 3 points that we talked about when we came to designing it, and also now why people should use them. So comfort. The challenge, of course, with building something around comfort is that comfort is quite subjective. It's like me telling you that this is my favorite meal and you should all enjoy it because it's the best flavor ever. You can get a bit more scientific. And when we actually constructed our air mats, the comfort came from the construction, which is really exciting. The guys looked at the best or the most popular and most comfortable mattresses that are used at home and considered that pocket sprung mattress concept in a really packable size. So that's where our air sprung cells came from. I'm just going to quickly stop sharing the screen if I can work out how to do it quickly. So here is a sort of a small little pad of air sprung cells that we have in our air mats. So what we have when you're lying on one of our air mats is, as you compress the air on one of the cells, it disperses that weight evenly in the cells around it. Instead of giving you a wobbly lilo effect where the air shoots up and down the whole mat, or side to side baffles where the air sort of flips you off sideways. What you get with all of the individual sprung sails is stability, and the stability provides you with comfort and keeps you off the ground and gives you that sort of nice long sleep that you're after. So the air sprung sails was the foundation of our mat story. It came with it a lot of challenges manufacturing. Nothing else was really out there like it, but I'll get to that in a second. Come back to my presentation. So air sprung sails, these pocket sails with our air mats, were the foundation and the reason that our mats are very comfortable. It won a lot of awards when it was launched. Since then, we've continued to develop other features, made things easier to use, updated fabrics, but that foundation and the air sprung sails, that story remains the same, which is a good thing because it means people are obviously enjoying them. People are obviously sleeping well. So that's comfort. The next bit is really quite cool. This is when we talk about durability, and this is where SeatoSummit and the design-driven nature of the brand comes into its own. There's a lot of fabric development that you never really see when you're using a product or even when you're necessarily selling it in a store. And without looking into things in minute detail, you'd never really realize. But of course, these are the differences. These are why a product will last 10 years instead of 2 years, or why it doesn't have sort of mold grow in it, why you can drag it a little bit on the ground without having to worry about it getting a puncture. So I'm just going to quickly talk about some of the fabrics that we use and some of the technologies that we actually use to create them as well. So this is currently talking about the air mats that we have. Most of it is applicable for the self-inflating range as well. So when you look at a fabric, such as the fabric that I've got on this square, I'm going to stop sharing again so I can show it. The outer fabric, the grey layer that you can see here, is typically what someone might look at and say, oh great, there's the fabric. There's so much more to it than that. So firstly, every mat that we have, the fabric, before it is constructed into a mat, has an acrylic coating that's applied to the top of it. Now that acrylic coating provides it with a bit of abrasion resistance. It also provides it with a bit of extra durability, and it also means that our repair patches can adhere to it. So that's one layer, and that's on top of the fabric. The second thing then is the fabric itself. So we choose a material which is going to be durable enough, but also lightweight. So it's not something that's going to tear easily. We product test incessantly with different fabrics on our mats. We've tried 20 denier fabrics. This is quite lightweight. We can make a mat out of it. Great, it works. Fails a little bit too easily, and we don't like the return rate of that. We could make it even more heavy and durable, but then you lose the benefit of a lightweight mat. So we continually trial different fabrics. Currently, we've settled on a 30-40 denier fabric. It provides for us a really great mix of lightweight as well as durable. And it's really easy to then actually manufacture the mat out of. So that's two parts. You've got an outer acrylic layer, you've got the fabric itself, but what's almost the most important is making that fabric airtight. So on the inside, the fabric of every SeatoSummit sleeping mat is a TPU layer. TPU is incredibly durable, it is flexible, and it is airtight, which is why we use it. So we have this airtight TPU layer on the inside of the fabric. That means then obviously when you're pumping it full of air, it's not going to leak. This is down to 0.03 of a millimeter thick. It's ludicrous, the sort of exact figures that are being used when you construct these. So that's just the fabric itself. When we adhere the TPU, which is actually white, to the outer fabric, we use a process called extrusion lamination, which is this sort of image that you can hopefully see on the screen here. This is not used in sleeping mat manufacture. This is from the aeronautical industry. It is a way of applying two fabrics together almost at a liquid stage, and it means that it is just bomb-proof. You never get bubbles appearing between fabrics. It is so solid. And this is just one of those little details that you'd never notice using the mat itself. The factory that we make our air mats in, or our sleeping mats in, They don't make sleeping mats for other brands. They actually make emergency aircraft slides and life vests for aircraft. Their quality control is through the roof. They really enjoyed the concept when we took it to them and agreed to work with us. These are the partnerships that we really value as a design-driven brand. And it means that we can just go to the highest quality of testing, of fabrics, and they partner with us when they say, you can't do this, and we say, we think you can. They say, all right, let's give it a shot. Other suppliers are so stuck in their ways. They say, no, you can't do that. You have to do it our way. We go, well, no, that's not how we want it to be done. When you apply a fabric like this, you can also do other fun stuff to it. So our fabric actually has antimicrobial treatment within it, which is great. Doesn't mean it's going to wear off. It's part of the fabric. And it means if you're blowing up your air mat and you get some moisture in there, which comes from your breath, you don't have to worry about it getting moldy on the inside, unlike my old self-inflating mat when I was a student, which was horrible. So that's just the fabric. This is the detail that we go into. You then have to stick it together. These are just some shots from the factory for one of the mats. These are the dot welds that you see when you create the air sprung sails. These are all calibrated to, I think it's 0.02 millimeters after every batch to make sure that they haven't moved at all. It is freaky the amount of detail that goes into the construction of our mats. And then every mat is overinflated. The little gadget that you got on the left there, 1.5 times, that's 1.5 times the usable pressure that you would have in there. It'd be hard to even recreate that using your breath. So every single mat is overinflated and then left for 24 hours before it's rolled up and packaged away, which is pretty cool. It gives us such confidence in the product, and it should give also customers that same confidence, which is really cool. Now, I'm going to wait before answering that question. So a couple of other things and a few little props that I've got here too. I'm going to stop sharing. When it comes to then manufacturing the mat, so those dot welds, we use a technique called radio frequency welding. So instead of the fabrics being put together and then heat squeezed through them to stick them together, which is normal welding and commonplace, we use a radio frequency welding, which is essentially a radio frequency shot through the fabrics. It almost blends them from the inside out, and it means you do not get failures. Of any issues I've seen with our air mats, people getting punctures, it's still an air mat, it's going to happen. I've never seen a dot weld actually peel away and create a bubble on one of our mats. I'll zoom in a little here, hopefully not too much to myself. But this is a small cutout from one of our mats. Hopefully you can see it. These are supremely strong. I'll try and break it, and I might break it. But what I'll never do is actually tear the radio frequency at the end. It gives you a gauge of just how weak I am maybe, but how strong the welds are themselves. This is where a crowd of students, you have a look around the room and you see who's the strongest staff member and you give it to them. And usually they struggle too. This stuff is just so strong, so strong. So there's the white TPU layer on the inside. That's what's making it airtight. Our ripstop fabric on the outside with the acrylic coating, and it's joined with the radio frequency weld. So that's a small part of obviously what we have throughout our air mats to make them so reliable. So they're comfortable, they're durable, these are good things, and they're also really, really easy to use. I'm going to say, does anybody own a SeatoSummit sleeping mat at all? Cherie does, Rob does. Israel, nice to meet you. You do as well. Excellent. So,
sorry, Ross, I had a complaint the other day.
Go on.
This is true. You know, that sample you had, that square patch, was that the Etherlite, the 8 centimeter thick or something or other? The square patch you've got?
Yes, it is.
How thick is that?
10 centimeters.
8? Yeah. Oh, well, a lady complained because she fell off. And yeah, she actually complained about the height that she fell off. Because
she needs one more like this, I think.
No, but I thought that was a good complaint, right? I've never heard anyone complain about how high they fell off their sleeping mat. Anyway, I digress. Carry on, mate. I don't know if any of these guys have used one of the SL mats. I'm sure he has, yeah.
So we talked about those 3 points being being comfortable, being comfortable, being durable, and then easy to use, right? That easy to use can be a challenge for people in inflating an air mat. We acknowledged that quite early. So here's our most popular mat at the moment, really, the Etherlite mat. The stuff sack that it comes in, stand up, also doubles as a pump sack for the product. So if you haven't seen these before, they are so easy to use. I'm going to try and do it now without covering the microphone too much. So when we first launched these mats, they didn't come with a pump sack. It was sold separately. We quickly realized that it was so popular, we wanted to make sure that we brought it in with the product. It should take 3 of these, which when you're out, you know, you've been hiking or traveling all day, the last thing you want to do is blow manually into a mat. You just haven't got that. You want to get your tent set up, you want to get your gear in there, and then you want to go and have some food. So to know that this is simply this easy, do a tiny bit more.
While you're blowing that up, how did you guys come up with the idea for that?
The pump sack idea wasn't new. There's other sort of pumps out there. A few other brands have got a balloon. Again, it was sold separately that you could blow into. I haven't talked about the valve that we actually have on our mats, which is patented, and that's one of the key features of it. It's incredibly low profile. What we really wanted to do was make sure it was part of the package that a customer gets, and that's where integrating it into the stuff sack itself was a really neat feature. How someone came up with it, I'm not sure I could answer that exactly, Cherie. It's pretty good. I wish I did. But as simple as that, you've inflated a mat that's 10 centimeters thick. It's one that you might fall off, as you say, Rob, and you're ready to go. So that's probably one of the biggest easy to use features that we have on the mats, but it's not the only one. So air mat, we talked about before, look, they do puncture. It's the nature of an air mat. We want to make sure that if that happens when you're in the middle of nowhere, you can fix it instantly. So every single mat, whether it's a self-inflating one of ours or whether it's an air mat, will come with repair patches. Now, most of them are just a peel and stick. So if you've heard of the brand 3M, they make a lot of hooks that you can adhere to your walls at home. Oh, it's a bit close to me, sorry. So peel and stick, and that is a permanent fix. It's not something that you then have to worry about fixing up when you get home. That is it, done. In store sessions, usually I give someone a little pocket knife, they stab the mat and repair it there and then. I don't have a knife with me, but I'm sure you can believe me. That's another really important thing. You know, an air mat can fail, but we want to make sure that you can then sleep comfortably either that night or the next night. So every mat comes with a repair patch. And then another recent addition, and this is again the fact that we want to continue to evolve our products. The design team will never stop designing, even if they've launched a product. Now that's great for the product, and that's great for customers at the end. It's really frustrating for a brand manager because you have to continually make sure that all your customers have the latest iteration of a product. Warehouse managers hate it because they have to make sure that they separate the old from the new. But importantly, it is for the right reason. It's making sure that the best product is on the shelf. So one of the final things you might have seen when I held this up, I'll zoom back out. is these 4 patches on the top here. So every mat also now comes with an optional pillow attachment kit. So it's called a pillow lock. So you don't have to use these, but these are peel and stick patches that come onto the top, that can go onto the top of your mat, and they integrate with any SeatoSummit pillow. If you've not seen the pillows, I just pulled this one out of a bag that's rather small. This is one of our down pillows. So again, we're talking about that sleep system. So it's not just the mattress. What else comes with it? The pillow. You can, incidentally, you can use the pump sack to inflate these as well. Obviously, it's quite easy to do so. And this actually, using a fleece lining on the bottom, which they all have, will now adhere to the pillow lock and gives you a really nice setup for your campsite. There's nothing worse, and as mats do get thicker, nothing worse than losing the pillow, your pillow in your sleep. You can nicely butt up next to this and have a comfortable sleep. Especially if your mat is this thick, it can be hard to, you know, subconsciously in your sleep sort of gather it and slide it back onto your mat that you're used to maybe on a 5mm foam mat. So that's a nice little addition, and there's a great little mat and pillow setup, which has proven really popular for us. So we launched that pillow lock compatibility last year, so it's been around for 18 months or so now, which is really quite cool. Just jump back to my presentation to prompt me to see what I have next.
Do you also have a Velcro for the sleeping bag too? Because often I roll off the mat, and it would be helpful if I could just stick to it.
We don't have on the bottom of the sleeping mat, on the sleeping bag, sorry. I will show you a cool new product in a minute though, in the way that that does integrate with our sleeping mats. But yeah, nothing on the bags, unfortunately, Cherie. I haven't got any advice for that one.
New product design?
There's a prompt here for me. So how about mats for outdoor education? For us, a lot of our development is driven by lightweight, people that are hiking, carrying it themselves, mountaineers. But we see a growing market for first timers, people entering the market for the first time. Someone's not necessarily going to purchase a $300 Etherlight, which is the mat I just had then, if it's their first go, right? And it's easy for me to say, fair enough. But we equally want to make sure that people are using a product that's going to last a long time and serve them well, whilst ensuring that, you know, they're comfortable and have a good night's sleep. So in our self-inflating range, just got a couple of examples up here. We look at making mats that are durable enough for someone that maybe hasn't used a mat before. They don't know how to care for it properly, and easy enough to use. So self-inflating is usually a tick there. There's also a price consideration there. Our camp mat, similar to this, is a slightly lighter version. Retails at just over $100, and that's incredibly popular for us in the market. What do we look to do differently? And here's actually one thing that's changing for next year. So I've rolled up and put away, I would hate to imagine how many sleeping mats. I've become quite good at it. Outdoor instructors are usually pretty good at it as well, because they've had to struggle and fold up and roll up so many students' mats that they couldn't get back into their stuff sack themselves. And historically, we've probably made stuff sacks a bit too snug as well. So into next year, hopefully you can see this on the screen here, all of our self-inflating mats are going to have a gusseted, see if I can zoom in slightly again, the gusseted stuff sack. So on the side here, you can see this crisscross pattern. So as it is now, this is a really wide opening. If you've got a student, it's the first time they've been outside, they're not used to rolling up or compressing a self-inflating mat, they can now get it into here really easily without folding it up to its smallest. Equally, if they've got it in here easily, they can now cinch the sides shut, and you've got a stuff sack back to its normal size. Doesn't look great with just my hand in it, which is nicely compressed. So it's not something that we do for all mats. We don't need to do it for air mats, but we're acknowledging that there's a need to be more accommodating for people that haven't had as much experience. And I'm really excited for that to hit stores next year. That's just another one of those inline changes I was talking about. So a lot of retailers will be jumping up and down saying, give me a lot of those spare stuff sacks. But that's a really cool little innovation for the outdoor education market, really, but everyone that uses them. We're also always looking at closed cell foam options. You know, that's probably the very start of where mats came from, those roll-up mats. But there's a bit of a gap in our range for that. So we're looking there too, and I think that's a good, easy one for outdoor educators to use. Quick sneak peek on a couple of other things for next year as well for mats. We have, so that sleep system finder I was talking about earlier, we've had about 35, probably close to 40,000 independent users on that now, and that's globally. And it really gives us a lot of fantastic data to be able to put to the design team and say, hey guys, did you know 15% of people are going to conditions less than -5 degrees? Okay, that's to be considered. Did you know, 50% of people that are after a self-inflating mat actually want a rectangular sized mat? It's really useful information. So we take that, we take feedback from our retailers, we take feedback from ambassadors that we work with, and any feedback that we get, Facebook, Instagram, just our generic inquiries, emails, it's scary how much comes through, but it's also really great to see how that actually transitions, and you see some of the feedback result in product development too. One of the things we really identified in this last year was a need to have a mat for extremely cold conditions, which is ironic talking about today. I was down the beach all weekend. It's beautiful here in Perth. It's certainly not a time to be talking about a mat that's going to take you to sort of -15 and beyond. But the Etherlite mat that you saw there, the grey number, this year coming up. So launching in retail stores next year. We've got an extreme version. So this is jam-packed, filled with insulation, designed to be used pretty much anywhere. There'll be few conditions in Australia where it's relevant, but in the high country in winter, Tassie as well, and also for cold sleepers, those people that just want more insulation. So we're really excited to bring this one out next year. People are really responding to the thicker mat, and they're also wanting to make sure something is warm enough for them. So that's an exciting one to come out next year, and it's quite a cool colour. We quite like it.
What's the temperature rating for that?
So I didn't include this, but it's a very good question. So sleeping mats. Stop me if I talk for too long here. Sleeping mats don't have a temperature rating. What they do have is a rating or a standard called an R value. An R value, R stands for resistance. It's resistance to heat loss. Your insulation in your attic at home has an R value. Of course, this is more specific to camping mats. What an R value does is it's a test that now global brands all use. So what it means is, you're comparing apples with apples. How to interpret an R value is currently being undergone by most global brands. Demarest, SeatoSummit, Big Agnes, all brands are now having to use the same standard, which is fantastic because it means consumers can compare mats accurately. But how you interpret what does an R value of 4 mean, that is still a little bit sort of subjective. And so for us, it's very important to help educate people. We're not going to make outlandish sort of claims that this mat will take you to these conditions, but we want to educate people. Hey, this mat is designed for these conditions. Consider also whether, you're sleeping on cold ground. Are you in a tent? What sleeping bag do you have? Even have you had dinner before you go to bed? These sort of things all make a big difference in how warm you can be. What I can tell you is this mat is, so this is an R value 6.3, Cherie, which is huge. We have had people use an R value of 4 within the snow before and being comfortable. So to have a mat now in our range of 6.3, we're confident that this will take you to most places. I mean, I'd be confident taking this anywhere in Australia. Even, mountains in Tassie, middle of winter, ice shelf, you get a lot of insulation out of this mat when paired appropriately with the right sleeping bags and liners. So this is a true 4-season sleeping mat, which is really exciting. I hope that helps. There's a lot of subjectiveness, and I'll talk about sleeping bag ratings in a minute if you like. The sleeping mats for us is a huge category. It's one of real importance. We continue to evolve and develop our ranges using different materials, improving how we use them, where offcuts go, things like that. So it's an exciting one I could talk about for a lot longer, but I'll talk a bit about sleeping bags, conscious of the time. I'll pull up. Presentation. So just quickly, so sleeping bags. So we've talked about the mattress that we have at home and how that relates to a sleeping mat. Talked a little bit about the pillow as well and how that integrates. Now it's about the doona, right? It's bringing that warmth, that coziness in the sleeping bag. Understanding sleeping bags is really important for a lot of people when they come to deciding what's going to be right for them. And the biggest part of that is understanding the insulation and how that works. There's two types, so like a sleeping mat where there's self-inflating air. Within sleeping bags, we have down insulation and synthetic insulation. Following from there, and after we've understood that, we look at the shapes and sizes of the bag and also the fabrics that are used. But we'll talk a bit about insulation first. You know, similar sort of graph we were looking at before for mats. So pros and cons, and how do we combat these within our design? So down insulation is the warmest for its weight, period. It is unsurpassed. Nature does it best. There's different standards and qualities, but generally down is the warmest for its weight. It's light and compressible, and when it's cared for, it can be more durable than a synthetic bag. Limitations. Yes, it's more expensive, and it can lose performance when it's wet. So how do we combat those? Come to that in a second. Synthetic insulation, look, it's generally cheaper, which is great. It does contain or maintain its performance even when it's wet. The challenges of synthetic insulation is that it does not compress as well as down, and it is not as warm for its weight. People will buy bags for different reasons. Our down range is bigger than our synthetic. We still see it as being it is a far more popular insulator within sleeping bags in Australia. A few more people are using synthetic bags for ethical reasons as well. And also just for ease of use and that maintaining performance even when it's wet. The price is of course important too. When you're considering, outdoor education, a scout group or something like that, it's hard for some parents to justify spending $500 on a sleeping bag for their child, and they don't know how long they're going to use it for. Synthetic options are cheaper. There's an easy understanding of why that's more popular in that space. The down insulation. So down is it's nature at its best. All these tiny microfibers that are naturally on these plumes work so well to trap your body heat and insulate you. Down needs to loft to be able to do so. If you compress it, it's not doing its job, or it can't do its job. When it's allowed to loft, that's when it will trap your warmth. We use, as do I would certainly hope, any decent sleeping bag supplier or down apparel supplier is responsibly sourced down. All of our sleeping bags come with an independent down and feather laboratory certificate of authenticity that quantifies that it is responsibly sourced. It also quantifies the quality of the loft. We talk about loft a lot. It's important, and often our bags actually far surpass how we sell them. We might say that it's a $750 loft bag. Occasionally they'll come in at way above that mark. It's us making sure that we're providing people with at least what they expect, and often more. There's a little bit about it. This is pretty readily available for people to see online. It can be a pretty hot topic in terms of the welfare. Is it sourced ethically? The RDS is still the best globally recognised sort of certificate, if you will. We'll continue to look at other alternatives as and when you can. Leave it at that really there. One of the challenges with down insulation, before I go into synthetic insulation, is its moisture protection. So we sort of talked about that as its limitation. I've got a jar here of down, which is quite cool. It's it's also all over the floor in this meeting room because it's impossible to get down into a small jar without making a mess. So I apologise to whomever is going to be in here next. There's quite a bit of down. It's a fantastic insulator, as I've said, and it's absolutely incredible. But yes, it can lose performance when it's wet because it clumps and you lose all of those micro pockets of air. So what we do is we use a Ultradry Down in our bags, which is a water resistant down, which is quite cool. So at its infancy, down is treated, we use a Blue Sign approved treating agency to make sure that it's actually water resistant. Therefore, if you're out and you find your tent gets wet, maybe your feet at the bottom of your sleeping mat are touching the tent wall, you don't have to be paranoid that you're suddenly going to lose insulation and potentially lose some toes. With any luck, what I've put in here is the right down, and I might just pour some water into it and show you actually what Ultradry Down looks like. So this is just down within here. Actually pour water straight on top of it. You can see, I'll have to zoom in any further. How cool is that? So it just sits on top of the water and doesn't absorb any of it, which, considering that's the main limitation of down, if we can use this down within our sleeping bags, and I mean, I'm simulating a pretty unrealistic scenario, unless you are genuinely floating down a river in a sleeping bag. It's pretty impressive. And it's also, it's not just sitting on top, but it's really maintaining its loft as well. So we use Ultradry Down throughout all of our sleeping bags. There's other treated down alternatives, but we've using this for years since we launched our bags over 10 years ago, and we're really, really pleased with how it performs. That worked well. I'll have to do that more often. Go back to my presentation. So that's acknowledging one of the limitations of down and moving out of it, and then synthetic insulation. So synthetic insulation is trying to mimic down. It's as simple as that. It's trying to create as many of these micro pockets to trap your warmth and keep you toasty during the night. We partner with a brand called Thermalite. They are one of the pioneers, definitely, in the market. There's other brands such as Primaloft, and then a lot of home branded stuff as well. The difference between branded and non-branded insulation in this market can often be durability. Thermalite is great. We know it works again and again, wash after wash. If you have a non-branded synthetic insulation, and we're talking sort of really cheap bags here, what actually happens after a few washes is all of those microfibers just start breaking apart. And all of a sudden you can find that you've got huge cold spots in your sleeping bag. So we make sure that we're partnering with the right brands, the right suppliers of insulation, so that bags will last. As we talked about earlier, you know, that's really important. So that's the insulation. I'll just quickly talk about shapes of bags. You know, there's lots out there, and this is really important, I think, too, for outdoor education. There's these mummy bags, right? I've got one of them hanging behind me here. It's really great at trapping heat because of its sort of snug fit, but it cannot be comfortable sometimes. If you thrash around or move around a bit more in your sleep, or if you're compressing the side, you're compressing the insulation. Therefore, it's not going to keep you warm. So there's some real sort of considerations, and the tapered rectangular bag that you see on the right of the screen here, maybe it's your left, the blue bag, that is actually our most popular bag in Australia, which is the Trek bag. It is more relaxed. Sure, it's a bit bulkier, but people appreciate that they can move a bit more in their sleep. It's got a zip that goes right the way around it, so you can open it up to be a full doona if you wanted to. And so we're seeing a lot of popularity in these sort of extra flexible, versatile arrangements with zippers, bags that can work together, bags that can sort of ventilate from the bottom. And for outdoor education, that comfort is a really important factor. Comes back to why we develop sleeping mats. We also need to consider that with why someone would buy a sleeping bag. And then finally, the fabrics that we use. And this is another really interesting one. So like the bag behind me, supremely lightweight fabrics, great for someone that wants a bag that's going to pack less than 500 grams, take up no room in their bag. But what are the limitations? Durability is huge. And if you're going to be, again, a leader or scouts or something like that, taking something with an 8 denier super lightweight fabric, it's probably not going to cut it. It's probably going to rip or tear in the first time of use. Whereas using something with a 50 denier fabric, something that's got reinforced areas, that's where I see more benefit in the outdoor education side of things, or someone that's going to be using a bag for the first time. So we continually balance, we continually try different fabrics. It could be something with a reflective side to it to help provide more warmth. It could be something with improved breathability, or it could be something that's actually waterproof in its nature. We'll continually trial different fabrics to find out what's best, really working with who the targeted end user is. No point in giving someone who's going to be dragging around, a campsite, the lightest weight fabric ever. Whereas if someone's going to be running with it on their back, that's probably applicable for them. Sheree, you talked about temperatures earlier. Ooh, so this is a fun one. For sleeping mats, they give us a standard. A standard then needs to be interpreted and people need to be educated in it. With sleeping bags, you're actually given a temperature number. And that means that people can look at that number and go, great, this is it. I was in a retail store a few years ago, and a customer walked in and they looked at what was quite a cheap sleeping bag. It had the name Everest in it somewhere, and he just simply walked up to the girl at the counter and said, "Hey, this is called the Everest bag. Will this take me to the Everest base camp?" I thought, whoa, that bag is not applicable at all for Everest base camp. But that's where consumers are. That's where we need to make sure we continue to educate people. With a sleeping bag, this standard again is widely used so that consumers can compare apples with apples. They know that if they're looking at a lower limit for one manufacturer, they can compare it with a lower limit of another. But what's important to consider is that these are tested in they're not in a real environment. It's in a laboratory. It's a mannequin who's in a fridge, for lack of a better way of thinking about it. It doesn't simulate you rolling over in the night. It doesn't acknowledge whether you have a fast metabolism or a slow one. And that's really important to interpreting these and reminding people of what they also should be taking with them. So just quickly, the comfort, the highest number that you'll see on a sleeping bag rating is, this is the definition from the standard. So this is not something that we write. This is the temperature at which a standard woman can expect to sleep comfortably in a relaxed position. We have now quite a few women's specific bags in our range. We publish that level for women and encourage them to look at that figure. The lower limit, next one, this is where a standard man can sleep for 8 hours in a curled position without waking. This is what we use for SeatoSummit to publish for the unisex bags or the male specific bags in our range. And that's pretty standard out there. Extreme really shouldn't be looked at. This is not something that someone should be buying a bag based upon, but it's part of the standard and therefore that's the lowest limit that really is survival rating. So much needs to be considered when people are talking about temperatures. We have people that say, "Oh, I'm not sure I'd quite agree with that rating," or actually I was overheating in that situation. A sleeping bag's insulation is working to trap your own heat. So if you're generating lots of heat, it's going to keep you toasty. If you're losing a lot of heat, maybe you don't even have a sleeping mat. Maybe you've got a non-insulated air mat. You're going to lose a lot of heat to the ground. And so it doesn't matter what sleeping bag you have. It's not going to be able to function or, perform as well as it could do and has done in the laboratory situation. So it's a delicate balance. Again, it's challenging for retail stores sometimes or brands when there's an exact temperature defined, because it means people can look at that and say, oh, it will take me there. There's a lot of considerations that need to be taken into account. And we'll continue to work as a brand. We see it as our sort of, it's on us to be able to educate people. We've got a blog now on our website that we continually use as an education piece. It's not just about spruiking products. It's actually about saying, hey guys, here's some considerations you might want to make before you choose your next sleeping bag or your next sleeping mat. I think it's a really important for a brand to acknowledge that part of where they are in a market and an industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ross. I might have to cut
it. The time?
Unless just because I want to open it up to the group with any questions. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I have a few, but I'll let some other people go first and then see how we go.
Please.
Ross, it's Dom Courtney from Queensland here, mate, from Queensland Outdoors Queensland. A couple of things. I know you mentioned the factory you work with. That looked like it's overseas somewhere, is it?
It is, yeah. So
I was just going to ask about that side of things as far as the sustainability of that side of things, and even that on the, that sort of environmental sustainability for SeatoSummit. I know you guys certainly engaged in that space. I just wanted to ask about that sort of process in your products.
Yeah, very, very much engaged in it, and sometimes we don't talk enough about things, but also we want to be experts in them when we do. So to talk quickly on manufacturing, yes, I mean, pretty much all of our gear now is manufactured overseas at a very early stage. Roland and the owners set up partnerships within China. We distribute our brand SeatoSummit. It's globally now over 60 countries. I think it's probably about 75 countries, and we have a direct link with a great team in China, and the relationships that we've set up with factories in and around Asia, we couldn't do elsewhere now, and we will drive them to be better in certain things that they do. So this particular factory that I was talking to you about, Dom, it's in Taiwan. You just couldn't manufacture product like that, I think, anywhere else in the world. And when you're wanting to develop high quality product, a product that lasts, that's certainly something that's really at the forefront of our mind. That's one part. When it then comes to sustainability and what we're looking at doing, there's a lot of things that are already in place. Talked about the treatment for Ultradry Down. Essentially, the down is pushed through it's like an aerosol chamber. It's horrific for the environment. We've been using a Blue Sign approved PFC-free company to treat our down for, I think, about 6 or 7 years. We probably don't talk about it enough, but we're really trying to advocate for better, behind the scenes, sustainable solutions. I was lucky enough at the start of last year to actually visit a few factories in China. It's staggering seeing the different ways that product is manufactured, and then a lot of it's the transport too. So I was in a factory that were manufacturing some of our cooking pots. Every other pot in the factory is in a plastic bag that's thrown away for every part of its journey. Ours were stacked up with wooden sheets between them and newspaper underneath them, and they come in a carry case which is not plastic. It's a fabric carry case which is designed to be reused and reused for the next batches that we run. So it's stuff we don't outwardly talk about enough, but a lot of it goes on behind the scenes. You will also, sorry Sheree, I'm going too long. You'll also start seeing fabrics coming through in our range. So dry sacks, you guys probably all own a dry sack or two. They will start all being recycled PET, which is great. So yeah, stand by. There's a lot more movement in that space, but we're also wanting to understand it fully before we do so.
Oh, thanks, Ross. Good on you.
Question.
Thanks, Dom. Do we have any other questions in the group? I'll ask one while other people are thinking. I was wondering, I'm a very cold sleeper, and I have a really hard time when I go camping because I often get cold. I'm looking at those extreme ratings thinking, oh, maybe I'll be warmer. But so do you have any recommendations for somebody who sleeps really cold? And yeah.
I think it's making sure that each part of your sleep system is then tailored towards warmth. There is no need for you, Cherie, or if you're buying a bag that's warm, but you haven't considered what your sleeping mat's doing, you could be undoing the work that you've purchased. You know, you've probably invested more in a bag, but maybe not considered the other part of it. So that's probably the first thing I would say is just make sure both your mat and your bag are working together, and the insulation is key. And then I've not talked enough about liners as well. So liners, they're a great product for multiple reasons, and one of those can be warmth. One of our top selling products that can't get enough of at the moment is called a reactor liner. It actually boosts the temperature of your sleeping bag. It's synthetic, so it works in the same way, and it works with down. It traps your heat, and that actually can boost the sleeping bag's temperature rating by 4 or 5 degrees. And that can obviously be the difference between a comfortable night's sleep or one where it's a bit broken and you wake up a few times during the night. It does sound like Cherie's eyeing up this black mat behind me, doesn't it?
Definitely eyeing that up. I can't tell you how much I hate to be cold, and I can distinctly remember one trip in particular to the to Kosciuszko, and it was one of the most miserable times of my life, but just because I was so cold.
The other thing with that as well is we do acknowledge, I mean, it's almost a 50-50 split of male and female that are in the outdoors, right? And probably as kids, they're a little bit different, they're a bit hardier, but we have a women's specific sleeping mats as well as sleeping bags. With mats, they simply have more insulation within them and they're shaped slightly differently. For sleeping bags, it goes to the extent of having synthetic insulation panels for extra warmth by your feet, more insulation in your torso, as well as being shaped accordingly. So not only do we sort of acknowledge and use a different temperature rating with them, they're actually warmer bags in themselves and tailored specifically for the likes of yourself who are maybe a little bit colder sleepers.
Awesome, thanks for that, Ross. Do we have any other questions in the group? If not, then the last question I'll ask, is there anything else exciting up and coming for SeatoSummit that we should maybe keep an eye out for, other than that, of course, beautiful black mat back there?
So we've got a couple of sleeping mats, which is nice. There's a few more in the self-inflating range. Within our sleeping bag range, what we've got has been working really well. We're really excited about it. One of the things that's been working best has been the versatility. People have really been responding to a bag that you can open right out and use as a duvet. And talking about Sleep System Finder, a lot of people are looking for quilts. Now, a quilt it's a pretty niche. It's heavily driven from the American market, but it's someone that wants something really lightweight, so they don't have anything underneath them, but that works with their sleeping mat. So I'll quickly hold one up on the screen. This is one of our quilts coming out for next year. Just looking for the right part of it. So this will cover you like that. You can see the straps on the side, Cherie.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about integration with your sleeping mat. These integrate with your sleeping mat. So you've got straps that keep it where you need it to be. You can actually press stud it to a sleeping bag as well. So you get all that extra warmth on top of your bag with a few other unique features too. So we've got a few extra quilts to our range, which again, fills a sort of a gap that we saw with the people filling out our finder, what they were looking for. So watch this space for those. There's some new sleeping mats, there's some new sleeping bags in the form of quilts coming in Feb, March next year. There's also a lot of other SeatoSummit excited stuff. So, you know, sometimes it can just simply be a new color in your favorite X cup or X pot, the collapsible range. Sometimes it can be a slight design tweak on that. The guys downstairs are forever working on new things. Make sure you send through any of your ideas and or feedback. You know, if there's something you guys use regularly in the field or you don't use but you wish there was, we're right here. The guys downstairs love ideas. They might take an idea and turn it into something else that you didn't even know was a thing.
Awesome, Ross. Thank you for that. If you want, or if you're happy to, if you want to pop and maybe an email link or a way people can contact you into the chat, and then we can add that in as well to our advertising for this. and yeah, and then people can contact you. I just want to say thank you so much for SeatoSummit and Ross and Rob coming into the room inside the Outhouse. We really appreciate it. Really enjoyed your presentation. Definitely gave me some things to think about, because I have been thinking about redoing my sleeping bag for quite some time now. And yeah, so I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Sharina. Thank you very much for having me, guys. It's exciting to talk about. As you can tell, I can get quite passionate about it, but I hope you took something away from it. And I've shot my email in the chat box, so feel free to shoot any other questions you might have my way.
Wonderful. All right, well, we're gonna stop the recording part of the session. If you guys wanna hang out around for a few minutes, if anybody else has any additional questions, then hopefully we can ask them now. So thanks.